It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
This one's all the rage, pretty popular. Driving for Uber or Lyft.
Yeah, this is something I actually love this, right? I have been someone who has been a huge benefactor of Uber and Lyft drivers. I know when I travel, it makes it so much easier now. I don't have to go rent a car or think about those sort of things. It is at my fingertips a ride anywhere in the world at any point in time, which I think is pretty incredible.
So let's kind of talk about the pros and cons of
Sure.
Uber and Lyft. And I thought this was interesting. When we talk about the pros column, it is you get to make your own hours.
Yep,
Because
you get to-
you basically turn it on, turn on the app, turn off the app when you want to. I even see drivers that do Uber, they do Lyft. They kind of
Like
work
switch
the
back
system.
and forth between them?
Exactly. Low or no overhead. Now, this one I think is a little deceptive.
Sure.
Because, yes, gas is really your only cost until you start thinking about the capital expenditures. Remember, I'm coming from a CPA background. I know that car that happens to be in your garage, yes, you have excess capacity, but when you're out there driving around in it,
Putting a lot of
you
strain on
are using, there is some additional sleeper cost with that fixed asset depreciating much more rapidly. So be aware of that. And then we also put on here, no specialized skills required.
Now, I think it's so funny because I'm thinking about you have a daughter who is 17, right? So
correct.
she's recently gone through the thing where she learned how to drive and became a driver. And I'm thinking there's a lot of like 14 and 15-year-olds thinking, no specialized skills. You got to be able to drive to do Uber. And unfortunately, I have been in Uber cars where I would argue that the skill set was not exactly equal amongst
It's
those
true.
drivers.
We've actually had a ride home from an airport recently with an Uber driver. Did you rate her poorly, or did you give her a 5-star?
I can't remember.
You
I don't
probably
know.
didn't even rate
I
her.
probably
knowing
didn't
you.
even rate her.
But here's the thing: no specialized skill. I think that's misleading a little bit too, is because if you're going to do it well, and we'll get to this in a minute when I give you some financial mutant mindsets. There's a way to do it better
Sure.
than the general public, but just to get the barrier to entry, it's very low to do this job.
Now, believe it or not, we have a lot of financial independent, retire early, fire folks who have decided when they leave the workforce, they want something to occupy their time. And so they might start doing one of these rideshare things. They drive Uber, drive Lyft to give them something to do. And they've told us that one of the big pros is you get to meet new people. You get to socialize and hear people's stories, and it allows you to have some interaction when maybe you've lost that in your day-to-day. So we put that in the pro here.
You actually thought that was a negative.
Yeah, I'm not one who likes to be a chatty Cathy inside the Uber, but for some folks, that's what they love, and so that's great.
You're talking about me.
Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Because I do. I will tell you that if you're ever my Uber driver, I like to talk to
He's
you.
gonna-
I want to know
he
you. I
wants
have a
to know all about it.
curiosity about everybody I come in contact with, so I will ask you questions. Matter of fact, here's what I find interesting. I use Uber a decent amount.
Sure.
But I only found out in the last year, and I put this on Twitter somewhere if you go look in the archives, that you're supposed to ride in the back.
You just call it shotgun and hop in the
forever,
front.
I was just jumping in the front with them, not thinking that I didn't realize I was breaking some protocol
love
that
it.
I'm just, I'm so friendly. I just wanted to sit right up there in the front, shotgun
I
with
love
them.
it. All right, so those are the pros to rideshare. Here's some cons you want to think about. Number one is you need a reliable vehicle. If you are going to count on this to generate income for you, you better make sure that it does get you to point A to point B. Nobody wants to be a passenger in an Uber car where it starts shaking and smoking and pulls off to the side of the road. That's not something you want to have happen.
And then you're also sharing a car with strangers. Now, I would have probably, when I see this, strangers actually is kind of exciting.
No, that one's weird to me.
Weirdos or dangerous situations is because, like, we've had a driver that, now realize we're doing this from the driver's standpoint. I'm sure they could tell a lot more
Sure,
stories
oh, yeah.
versus us telling about drivers. But, dealing with the general public, I've worked in jobs with the general public. There's some odd people out there sometimes.
And not only that, people don't treat your stuff as nice as they treat their stuff. So when they get in and slam the doors and put their luggage in, there's just something about it being someone who I'm not familiar with. Not my favorite. So I would put that in the con category.
And by the way, don't mishear me. I actually think we all have a lot of weirdo in us. I've
Sure.
explained in shows that I'm weird. It's just some of us hide it better than others.
And it's cool if you know the weirdness, right? Another one, and you already mentioned this, you'll have a lot of wear and tear on your car if you're using it for Uber, if you're driving tons of miles. And then the income's not consistent. There are different, it's really hard to model exactly what your ride-sharing income may or may not be if that's the side hustle that you're choosing to go down.
Well, I think here's something I've noticed while we're on the con list with Uber and Lyft is that when I've been out to Las Vegas, I can pretty much go anywhere in Las Vegas between the hotels and so forth, like $6-7. But
Sure.
if you go use the actual cab services, it's $17 to $19.
Way more expensive.
So I immediately asked myself, why is there such a huge disparity here?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I want to tell everybody to be very careful of if you're considering Uber or Lyft, is that you might actually not be making as much money as you think, is because that cab company, I can assure you, have figured out what the cost of their people are, what the cost of their equipment, the fixed assets and the depreciation, the cost of maintenance, the fuel, the insurance, and those type of things. I think sometimes, and we saw this, we did a whole series with over-the-road truckers, and truckers would tell us who were good at it, would say, the problem with my industry is there's way too many truckers that don't know their true costs, so they take jobs that are actually not profitable. I think the same thing can be said for these rideshare services. There's a lot of drivers that are willing to take jobs that are not profitable, and that's why you have some of these huge disparities. And that's why there's even been studies where it shows sometimes if you take into account depreciation and other things with your vehicle, you might only be making $3 to $4 an hour. That's a little concerning.
But we wanted to do some math, and we didn't want to go so negative on it. And according to TheStreet.com, after expenses, driving for Uber or Lyft can generally pay somewhere between $8.50 and $11.70 per hour, right? So in true money guy fashion, we wanted to put some numbers to this, right? We want to see just how powerful, how impactful this side hustle can be. So this is what we said. If you can make $10 an hour driving for a rideshare service, what happens if you work 40 hours per month, so 10 hours per week, and you can save about $280 per month towards retirement after taxes? Because obviously, remember, you got to pay some self-employment tax, you got to pay income taxes. So we just said, let's save $280 per month, earning 7%. If you did that for 5 years, you're just going to side hustle for this 5 years of extra capacity, what would that mean for you over a 30-year time period? What would those dollars turn into 30 years in the future? And this is what we found with this example. Over that 5-year period, you would have invested about $16,800, and it will have turned into an extra $115,000 for you by retirement. Not too shabby.
Now, when I was doing show prep, I thought we were actually pretty conservative at 7%.
Oh, I think we are,
because I can
for
already
sure.
hear my inflation trolls crawling out from the bridges, picking on us. But that's what I'm saying. We could have totally pushed this up to 8, 9% to account for even more inflation. I still think it's pretty powerful to know that whether it's the 16,800 or the six figures of 115,000, a little bit of behavioral choice changes and actions is creating more wealth. Remember, the two ways you create additional wealth is either you spend less or you make more. Incremental change of just 200 and something bucks, just a little bit over $200 a month, can have a big change in your overall lifestyle.
Now, Brian, in show prep, you said, all right, well, that's great, guys. We're going to lay out sort of this average case. But our folks aren't average. They don't want just the, okay, well, this is what everyone else does. We ought to sprinkle a little bit of that money guy magic and talk about what are some things you can do to maybe plus it just a little bit, maybe take it a step further.
So that's what, we originally said. I call this the financial mutant hack. How do you have a different worldview that actually maximizes your opportunities in the world? Because I think just by hanging out on this show, your money's going to go further than your peers.
Sure.
Here's what we realized. I've been riding enough and I've done enough research that, guys, if you just go out there to turn on the app and pick up rides, you're probably not going to make a lot of money.
Sure.
You need to be deliberate. You need to research. You need to do what others are not willing to do, and you can make more money. And one of the hacks for that is to learn to maximize tips. That one can be as good as putting in your bio things that are going on in your life.
Sure.
If you're young, engaged, other things like that. The other thing is understand surge zones.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
Here's a great experience share. I went on a Disney cruise. This is like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And my Uber driver or Lyft driver that picked me up at the port, he showed me, because we had a time for the conversation, because like a 35, 40-minute drive, he showed me he has the schedule for every ship that's coming into port. And he knows when that ship comes, every one of those ships comes into port, there's going to be a glut of people coming off that creates a surge. They're going to be willing to pay it because they're all going to Orlando to get their kids into the parks. And here's the thing. Surges are a ripoff, but you know what's a bigger ripoff? Mickey Mouse, and my favorite mouse in the world, overcharges for stuff. So it's easier to pay the surge than to lose your time in the parks with our favorite mouse. So people will pay it. So that's what he does. He has a very successful business picking up people at ports in Port Canaveral, driving them to Orlando, does it every week. all over and over and makes money. You can do the same thing. If you live in a city back pre-pandemic, we live in Nashville.
Yep.
You got to know that between 11 and probably 1, I mean, every time I've been down, because when relatives and friends come in town, they go, let's go to the honky
Go to
tonks.
see the honky tonks.
And you're like, okay, but here's my thing. If we're going to do the honky tonks, I just want to leave by 10:30 because after 11, everybody starts getting a little crazy,
Yeah.
and I'm old, so I don't want to do it. And plus, I also understand 11 to 1, you're going to have surges.
You can have surges on the
So
drives.
you've
Yep.
got it. These type of things. Use this skill set to maximize tips. Focus on surge zones. You can turn that low-paying job into a much better paying job if you just do a little bit more research.